7 bodies have been found around New England. And while law enforcement is not connecting the cases, people online have other ideas.
In some corners of social media, like Facebook, the idea that a serial killer could be on the prowl in New England is getting more popular.
It always starts small. A quiet neighborhood, a missing person poster, a news report that fades by morning. But then it happens again and again until the pattern is undeniable, and by then it's already too late. We like to think monsters are easy to spot, that we'd know one if we saw one. But what if they looked just like us? The 90s were a strange time, a decade of hope, chaos, and booming pop culture. But in the shadows of that hopeful world, some of the most terrifying minds operated quietly and methodically. Many of these killers didn't get the attention they deserved until the cameras showed up. Films, documentaries, and podcasts have all turned the spotlight on these cold-blooded figures. But somewhere in the obsession, we started to forget the real stories, the victims. Today, we're revisiting the deadliest serial killers of the 1990s. Some were caught, others barely scratched the surface of what they truly did. And the rest, their full stories may never be known. Luis Garavito. In February 1998, 3 boys didn't come home. Days later, their naked bodies were found on a lonely hillside near Hinovia, Colombia, bloated from the heat, wrists bound, necks slashed. Each boy had been raped, mutilated, and abandoned. They were just kids, poor, aged 11 to 13, and close friends. One of their mothers still remembers the last time she saw her son. He'd burst into the house excited. He said a man had offered him work helping with cattle. He left before lunch. By Monday, he was dead. The horror shook the community, but to a young investigator named Duran Saavedra Aldemar, something felt familiar. On instinct, he dug into old case files, and what he uncovered was terrifying. 13 boys, all poor, all tortured and murdered in disturbingly similar ways. Then, more cases spanned 13 of Colombia's 32 states. All boys, all the same story, and yet, no one wanted to believe him. Back then, Aldemar said, the idea of a serial killer felt like something from a movie. But this was real, and far worse than anyone imagined. The killer was eventually found, a drifter named Luis Garavito, a man who looked ordinary, sometimes with glasses, sometimes clean-shaven, carried out horrors beyond comprehension. He lured boys with promises of work, then led them to isolation where he tortured, raped, and killed them. In 1999, Garavito confessed. His body count was around 140, but many believe the true number is even higher. Today, he remains the world's most prolific serial killer, Harold Shipman. For decades, Dr. Harold Shipman was the trusted GP in the British town of Hyde, the kind of doctor who made house calls, smiled at neighbors, and treated elderly patients like family. No one suspected that behind that gentle exterior was Britain's most prolific serial killer. His method was chilling in its simplicity. He'd visit his mostly elderly female patients, administer a lethal dose of morphine, then quietly alter their records to suggest they were already terminally ill. Often, he'd urge the grieving families to choose cremation, erasing evidence along with their loved one's body. By the time he was caught, Shipman was convicted of 15 murders, but a public inquiry later revealed that he may have killed more than 250 people. One of them, heartbreakingly, was just 4 years old. But what kind of person does this? Not for money, not for revenge, not even for sex, but seemingly because he liked deciding who lived and who died? Prosecutors called him the Angel of Death, and many believe the roots of his cruelty began at 17, watching his mother waste away from cancer, comforted only by morphine. He never spoke of his motive, but just a few years later, he became a doctor himself. Despite an early arrest for forging drug prescriptions, Shipman wasn't struck off. Instead, he moved to hide and quietly started killing on a massive scale. One by one, elderly women died in their homes. It was easy to dismiss that they were old after all, but they weren't just old ladies. They were mothers and grandmothers. And when Shipman finally slipped up, falsifying the will of a wealthy widow, the truth unraveled. He was caught, convicted, and later took his own life in prison. Megan Huntsman. In April of 2014, a man cleaning a garage in Pleasant Grove, Utah, discovered a tiny body wrapped in plastic. Police arrived and uncovered 6 dead infants, hidden in boxes. Their mother was Megan Huntsman, a quiet woman from nearby Riverton. From 1996 to 2006, she gave birth to 7 children. 6 were murdered within minutes of being born. Alone and addicted to meth, Megan claimed she felt too lost to care for them, so she ended their lives, sometimes by pressing her thumbs to their throats, other times with cords around their necks. Then, she wrapped their bodies in plastic and stored them in her garage. In February 2015, Huntsman, then 40, pleaded guilty to 6 counts of first-degree murder. She showed no resistance. 2 months later, she was sentenced to 6 life terms, 3 consecutive, 3 concurrent. Her first parole hearing is set for 2064. She will be 89. Mark Dutroux. In the summer of 1995, 2 little girls, Julie Lejeune and Melissa Russo, vanished without a trace. They were just 8 years old. Authorities had a prime suspect almost immediately, Mark Dutroux, a convicted pedophile. Still, no arrest, no urgency. It wasn't until 14 months later that Dutroux was finally taken in. By then, it was too late. Julie and Melissa were already dead. They had spent their final days locked in a dungeon beneath his home, starved, terrified, and forgotten. Dutroux's own wife, Michelle Martin, admitted she knew they were down there. She went to feed the dogs, but left the girls to die. Later that year, Dutroux abducted 2 teenage girls, Anne and Eve G, from the coast of Ostend. They were best friends out for a night of fun. A month later, Dutroux and an accomplice buried them alive. Another accomplice, Bernard Weinstein, was also killed, poisoned by Dutroux to stop him from talking. But eventually, Dutroux was arrested. 20 potential witnesses died under mysterious circumstances that led many to believe this wasn't just the work of one monster, but a cover-up reaching far beyond him. The case shattered Belgium. Parents were furious, and protesters filled the streets in what became known as the White March. Dutroux was sentenced to life in 2004. His wife got 30 years, but was paroled after just 16, sparking public outrage. And today, unbelievably, Dutroux's lawyer is still trying to get him released. Aileen Wuornos. From 1989 to 1990, Central Florida saw 7 middle-aged men shot, robbed, and left near highways. Born in 1956 in Michigan, Aileen Wuornos' life was steeped in trauma. Her father, a convicted child molester, died by suicide in prison. Her mother abandoned her, leaving Aileen to be raised by abusive grandparents. By her teens, she was homeless, hitchhiking, and trading sex for survival. In 1986, she met Tyria Moore in a Daytona Beach bar. They fell in love, and the two scraped by, pawning off stolen items from Aileen's clients. What Tyria didn't know, or perhaps couldn't admit, was that these weren't just thefts. They were tied to murder. Police found a pawn receipt with Aileen's thumbprint. Surveillance, pawned belongings, and a camera traced everything back to her. And so in 1991, she was arrested. Tyria, now living with their family, agreed to help the police. With her voice on the other end of the line, Aileen finally confessed. She claimed self-defense, saying the men tried to rape her, but she later admitted some killings were for money. In 1992, she was sentenced to death. A decade later, Aileen Wuornos was executed. Michel Fournier. Michel Fournier, born in 1942 near the Belgian border, served in the French army before returning home, a changed man. At 25, he received his first conviction for attacking a girl. His crimes escalated over the years, leading to prison, where he began exchanging letters with Monique Olivier. She would later become his partner in a killing spree that began just 2 months after his 1987 release. For the next 15 years, Fournier hunted girls between 9 and 22 across France and Belgium, obsessed with virgins. Olivier helped lure the victims, sometimes with their child present. 7 were confirmed dead, though many believed the toll was higher. His downfall came in 2003, when a 13-year-old girl escaped, leading Olivier to confess. In 2008, both were sentenced to life. Even in prison, Fournier confessed to more killings, including British student Joanna Parrish and 9-year-old Estelle Mouzine. Just weeks before police were set to search for Estelle's remains, Fournier collapsed in his cell. He died in custody on May 10, 2021, taking many of his secrets with him. Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway, known as the Green River Killer, led a seemingly ordinary life. 30 years painting trucks, 3 marriages, while secretly committing one of the deadliest serial killing sprees in U.S. history. His crimes began in 1982, targeting young runaways and sex workers along Route 99 in Washington. He often lured them home, strangled them, and dumped their bodies near the Green River or in remote wooded areas. For nearly 2 decades, Ridgway evaded justice, but in 2001, new DNA technology finally linked him to several victims. He was arrested and later confessed to killing 49 women, avoiding the death penalty by revealing burial sites and agreeing to plead guilty to any new cases supported by evidence. More victims have since been identified, including 14-year-old Wendy Stevens in 2020 and Lorianne Ratspotnick in 2023. In 2024, Ridgway offered help in locating more remains. Ridgway is serving life at Washington State Penitentiary. Kristen Gilbert. Kristen Gilbert was a nurse at the Northampton Veterans Affairs Medical Center when patients under her care began dying at an alarming rate. She often worked the 4 p.m. to midnight shift when deaths in her ward mysteriously tripled. Many victims were young and medically stable, yet suffered sudden cardiac arrests. A suspicious shortage of epinephrine, a heart-stimulating drug, raised red flags. By 1996, colleagues filed a formal complaint. Investigators discovered that Gilbert had been injecting patients with fatal doses of epinephrine. During her brief incarceration for a bomb threat she made to the hospital, death stopped entirely. Exhumed bodies later confirmed traces of the drug, and in 1998, she was indicted for 4 murders and 3 attempted murders. In 2001, Gilbert was convicted and sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms. Though only convicted of 4 killings, authorities believe she may have murdered as many as 350 patients. Keith Hunter Jesperson. Keith Hunter Jesperson was always a storm waiting to break. Before the world knew his name, he was a quiet, angry boy in a violent home, strangling animals, craving control, and nursing the bruises left by his father's leather belt. Bullied for his size, ignored by girls, and shut out of life's soft corners, he grew to believe pain was the only way to feel powerful. As an adult, Jesperson found his freedom as a long-haul trucker, and with it, the perfect cover. From 1990 to 1995, he raped and strangled at least 8 women, leaving their bodies across highways from Oregon to Florida. Beyond killing, Jesperson wanted credit. When someone else was wrongly convicted of his first murder, he left a confession scrawled on a bathroom wall, signed with a smiley face, earning the nickname Happy Face Killer. He toyed with the police, wrote anonymous letters, and claimed to have killed over 100. His undoing came in 1995, when he murdered his girlfriend, Julie Winningham. Jesperson was arrested and sentenced to multiple life terms. Today, he remains in Oregon State Penitentiary. Benjamin Atkins. Between December 1991 and August 1992, Benjamin Atkins preyed on society's most vulnerable, women struggling with poverty, addiction, or homelessness, luring them with promises of shelter before unleashing unthinkable violence. In abandoned buildings along the Woodward Corridor, he raped, tortured, and murdered at least 11 women. To outsiders, he blended into the decaying streets he hunted. When he was finally caught, it was his own chilling confession that sealed his fate. He spoke of his crimes with cold detachment, showing no remorse. Sentenced to life in 1994, Atkins died just 3 years later from AIDS-related complications. There's no formula, no warning sign set in stone. What psychology reveals is simple and terrifying. Under the right conditions, anyone can become a serial killer. So, what do you think? What makes these chilling stories so captivating? Is it the mystery, the psychology, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us keep exploring these dark tales together.